Hello and welcome once again to Crazy Comics and Stories. It's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. And at the other end of the series of tubes and wires we call the internets is the man who has finally let me complete the introduction for the first time in over a month, Joe Crazy Rider. How you doing today, Joe?
Not my birthday. Joy not listening. Joy don't care.
Oh, so you only pay attention on your birthday?
Got that right, Skippy.
Oh, good. Then we could talk about you because we have special guests again.
We do?
We had a two-part episode, Joe. We haven't done a two-part episode in probably a good 3 years. I have no idea why.
Gordon Jump passed away.
He's been dead longer than 3 years, hasn't he?
If he isn't, he's really smelly.
Wait a minute. Dead? I didn't even know he was sick.
Geez, sometimes you just gotta give one. You set him up and it's hard to be a straight man in this show.
Speaking of straight men.
Wait. What was that? I want to hear more about this.
We have Dan and Wolfie.
Hello,
everyone.
I thought this was just a continuation. I didn't know we were doing a starting again.
Well, you have to treat every episode as if it's somebody's first.
For the love of God, turn it off! Go do something else with your time!
Wait, I could be somebody's first?
Too late.
And we also have, from Panels and Pizza Without the Pizza, Adam Vermillion.
Pizza.
Little known fact about these two episodes, they're based off of only one book.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is it Great Expectations? Because, I don't know, I'm a bit disappointed.
Was it? You know what? I'm not even going to follow that up. That was good.
No, we were talking 80's comics last week.
We were?
We were! Wolfie wasn't paying attention, was he?
No.
Obviously, neither was Joe.
Joe never pays attention. Joe thought it was his birthday episode.
But that's why he was gargling.
Oh, how did I get all this hair on my arm?
Is it stuck?
It felt.
Is it your arm or your palm?
Yes.
From column A, little from column B.
It goes all the way down, baby.
See, at work, they had a picture where they're having a contest where you post a picture with your significant other, and whoever gets the most likes wins. So I took a picture with me in my left hand.
Now, I've had a question for years that no one's ever answered.
Well, good for you, Cory.
If there's...
How you doing in Iowa, Adam?
Oh, everything's A-okay.
Wait, I want to hear the question.
The question is, if you have a... Let's say in this contest, if you have a picture of someone that you don't really much care for anymore, is that your insignificant other?
That's a very serious Festivus-like question. And since it's not Festivus, we will not answer.
Fine.
You ever find those crickets?
Yeah, the crickets
Chirp,
went
chirp,
home.
chirp, chirp. Chirp, 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 chirp.
But
Unfortunately, when I rub my legs together, it doesn't make the same noise.
More Velcro.
Yeah, can you?
maybe you should take a shower once in a while.
Take it.
I do. All the time.
Not
It's
that
like
kind
getting
of... Not a Trump shower, a regular shower with water and soap.
Oh. Kinky.
Well, we'll do it round robin like we did last time.
I'm in a much more fisky mood. I don't think we're getting through these.
Oh, I do. I have the power of mute.
Oh, shit.
So, we will start with Joe. We did 5. We're going to do 5 more. These are our favorite comics of the 80's. Joe, take it away.
Well, I have a tie, and
I have a whole bunch of ties.
I don't want to know about your sex life.
Yeah, those
But I
two,
do wanna
because I
know
used to be the best dressed man in comics. Used to
Is
be.
what is the better one to talk about? We talked briefly about toy tie-ins last time. It was interesting when they first started. They
What?
and then when Transform, it was tied into the Marvel Universe, and then it kind of drifted off on its own. And GI Joe was never tied into the Marvel Universe. But when they used to be, there were two that I absolutely loved: Micronauts and Rom. And the question is, which one should I choose? Because I could not figure out which one I thought was cooler.
Micronauts, the first 12 issues were drawn by Michael Golden, which makes it better.
They were in the 70s, so you can't count them.
Well, by the 80s, it was one of Marvel's first 3 series that went direct sales only.
So I will. That actually made me change my mind. I will go with Rom, mainly because I agree with what Cory said. The Micronauts, when it first came out, was just amazing because of the art and the fact that it kept going. But Rom, what I loved about Rom was it was the only comic.
Is someone opening a bag of chips in the background?
And for once, it's not me.
It's not me.
It's not me. No, Wolfie's not doing
Wolfie.
it either. Joe, did you? Okay, did Joe's mic cut out earlier?
No.
No, his internet faded.
No.
Oh, his internet faded. Okay, I was just wondering if maybe my phone was doing something weird. But no, I guess not. Never mind. I have no idea.
Cory likes to blame my internet, but it's not. Today it's actually working. I'm the only one in the house, so nobody else is trying to swallow my bandwidth. So anyway.
Go back to that.
Rom #1 was the only Marvel comic I ever picked up that was the only time I saw it and had no idea what it was. There were no house ads for Rom before the issue hit. There were for Micronauts, Transformers, G.I. Joe, even Shogun Warriors. But I was at Shinders, downtown Shinders, and again, this was during the infamous E-Block days. I'm sure my ma had no idea I was, walking around Minneapolis going to, E-Blocks and stuff. And I saw
Moby Dick's.
And it was, no, that was farther down. Moby Dick wasn't on E-Block because E-Block had the Shinders on both ends. One was the chain, one was the disgruntled brother, and in the middle you had like an arcade, you had a McDonald's, you had some other seedy bars and things that usually were closed. But there was Rom #1, Marvel Comics. No idea what it was, but because it was Marvel, I picked it up. And again, this was 79, so it just blew my mind away. And you kept going. I think the first tie-in, was it number 4 or 5, where he battled the same house that Doctor Strange battled way back in Strange Tales, which was pretty heady for a tie-in. And then later on, of course, Rom was integrated into the Marvel Universe. You had the 2 issues, I believe 17, 18, where he fought the X-Men, which back then was a big deal because you put X-Men in anything and it guaranteed extra copies. They brought in the Torpedo, which was a throwaway character that they retroconned into the series. He went out in outer space, he fought Galactus, came back, and eventually they revealed what the Dire Wraiths were. The original time we saw them, they were just these shadowy, blobby things. And the reason was given that because Rom was a toy line, which again shocked the hell out of me because I had no idea it was a toy, they didn't want to reveal what the race looked like. Well, when they decided they weren't going to, well, the toy line had died. And in 83, they actually revealed the scariest monster space the aliens I'd ever seen when they brought the sorcerer ones, where they had these tentacles, they'd hit your head, they devour your identity. Somewhere along the line, Rom decided he was no longer going to banish people, he was going to kill them. He got tied into there was a couple crossovers there. I think he crossed over, was it Power Man and Iron Fist? And a brief tie-in to the other heroes of the Marvel Universe came to try to finally deal with the dire race once and for all. They even made the race part of the an offshoot of the Skrulls. So Rom was totally integrated into the universe, and eventually, like most good series, I don't know if the license came up or they just decided to kill it because of sales. After 75 issues and 4 annuals, it was over with. And he's made a few appearances since then, but usually they were, how would you say it? Not legal, because I guess for some reason you cannot call a person Rom in the Marvel Universe without Hasbro saying it's okay. And, they've since just called him the greatest of all. And, they brought Space Knights back. They brought the Dire Race back because apparently Marvel owns them or something. But you can't have Rom in the Marvel Universe. He's hanging around in IDW somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, I think they've got his own series now.
Yeah, they're doing a Hasbro universe, and the rumor is that they're actually going to start doing movies. So you'll get a Rom movie, a Micronauts movie, a G.I. Joe movie, all tying in with the Transformers movies. Enjoy!
I even accept the final issues being done by Steve Ditko, which was quite a shock going from Sal Buscema to Steve Ditko. And I think it was just because I knew who Steve Ditko was. There were other people not as enlightened, were kind of like, oh my God, what happened to the art? This is terrible. Well, you take what you can get. It was nice to see Steve come back at least for a little while.
And it was Steve Ditko inked by P. Craig Russell. And, it was beautiful. Some of that stuff is just beautiful. It's a shame they're never going to be able to reprint it because it was on, cheap, crappy paper. And P. Craig Russell's coloring was out of this world. And
yeah, there was some talk about they were trying to see if Marvel could reprint it as a benefit for Bill Mantlo, why IDW hasn't gone that route, because they've reprinted other things, but maybe it'll never happen. I'm still holding out. It would be nice if we could get a decent copy of it, because this is one of those Marvel books that will probably never ever be reprinted. So you have to dig it out of the quarter bins or the dollar bins. Fortunately, they're not terrifically expensive. I'm just looking over through Atomic Avenue to see if any have any heat. I think number one's really the only one that has anything. It says near mint $34. They've got it listed $22, which means you could probably find it for less if you hunt around. Who's next on the round robin here?
Dan!
Yes. My number 5 is actually the Marvel Universe comics, which it was I don't know if we'd call it a comic because, there were pictures, but it was all the descriptions of the different characters you could get.
Oh, the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, or as us complete nerds call it, OHOTMU.
OHOTMU?
OHOTMU. Official handbook of the Marvel Universe.
Oh, it's not a cow in lingerie?
No.
Or some weird watcher name.
That's how we kind of started it.
It's the Peeping Tom version of the watcher. OHOTMU. For some reason, yeah.
There's a podcast that exists where they go through the official handbook of the Marvel Universe called OHOTMU or Not Moo.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's awesome. But I just love those because, I like I said, I started in the 90s, so it was nice to get books where I could kind of look and see the histories of the characters. Of course, they're so out of date. They were when I read them.
You kids with your Wikipedia, you don't understand what we had to go through.
I got, I love going back and reading the official handbook of the Marvel Universe Dead.
Yes.
Because, I don't think a single one of them is still dead.
They got better.
Yeah. Well, how did he die? What do you mean die? I just read a story with him.
I think there's one character that has famously stayed dead. So you go ahead and talk about it. I'm going to look them up.
Who's officially stayed dead, other than Uncle Ben?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Huh. Well, I can think of one, but anyway. But no, I love those. I love just reading those. I've got the Marvel Universe ones. I've got some for Transformers. Actually, the Marvel Universe had, when they were doing Transformers, had the handbook of the Transformers. Got those. I reread those. I just love I love just reading the old stuff. That way I know Cory and Joe and my guest Adam, you know this. You guys keep throwing out the artists and the writers. I have no idea who wrote or drew any of this stuff. I just know the stories. That's all I know. And it's because I read this shit. So it's like a novelization of a movie. It's a novelization or a short story version of the comics.
And to this day, when I actually bother writing anything and come up with characters, I still do like handbook style character pages.
Oh, really?
Name and height and weight and hobbies and backstory and everything. It's just ingrained.
Yeah. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, yeah. I usually do the drawings of my characters the way they do, with one hand facing forward, one hand facing back. That's how I designed the characters at first.
And I believe now the rumor is that DC's Who's Who came first, but it took so long to get ready that Marvel jumped in and did something very similar. There's also a story that the OHATMU came about because they were starting to put together stats for TSR's Marvel superhero role-playing game. You know what? We could sell this and make money off it.
Nerds will buy it.
Damn right we would.
Ooh, hot moo. I'm just gonna keep saying that. Ooh, hot moo.
Yes, OHATMU.
Oh, hot moo. Oh, hot moo.
Oh, hot moo to trot moo.
Don't touch yourself there.
I like touching myself there. Oh, hot moo.
Adam?
I don't know how I follow that up.
We're used to that.
Yeah. This goes way pre-comics, Adam, to more just about learning about these characters. Jumping back to the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends cartoon.
Ooh.
And that was probably my first introduction to Marvel comics and characters, not even really knowing what a comic book was in 1981 at 5. Or maybe I did, I don't know. But, that's definitely where I learned the name Stan Lee, because he introduced every episode. So it, here you had a narrator that talked to you. That was something new. You got to every once in a while have an episode where the X-Men showed up or somebody showed up, another superhero showed up, and it was just a lot of fun. I remember there was an episode where the Green Goblin was going to poison New York City's water reserves with the goblin gas or whatnot, and it's scaring the piss out of me when it was showing the regular citizens of New York turning into Green Goblins, and it really affected me at 5.
Yeah.
But, it let me know who Spider-Man was, who Iceman was. So when I started reading X-Men, years later, I knew that character. So Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, probably the gateway drug into knowing comic books and superheroes existed.
Spider-Adam does whatever a Spider-Adam does. Can you
Hit by a
swim?
radioactive pizza.
Yeah.
I can eat a lot of pizza.
By the way, I have found the character that was probably in the Marvel Ohatmu Book of the Dead that is still dead.
Which one?
It's not Uncle Ben?
Nope, Blockbuster, whose first appearance was as Man-Brute in Captain America 121. He died in Omega the Unknown #9 and has not been brought back, probably because no one remembers him.
Man-Brute?
Yep.
We just gave Marvel another $1 million Man-Brute idea, and they probably won't. They'll just blow it off like everything else.
Well, the bad thing is for poor old Bart Diesel,
Bart!
is his name has been taken by an X-Men villain.
Wait, Man-Brute or Blockbuster?
Blockbuster.
Oh.
Bart.
Bart.
Or is it
Not
Cory?
him! Not Bart!
Hey, Marvel brought back a guy named Joe.
Damn straight.
Was he TSA?
No.
Was he TNA?
No, that's a wrestling organization that's, it's not dead, but it's coughing up blood.
TNA?
Yes. TNA Impact on Pop
Holy smokes.
TV.
Do they?
Well, they pull in about 200,000 viewers a week, so.
Do they pull in and pop?
Let's put it this way. If this podcast doesn't get any better, we might not overtake them. My number 5 is one that's... my number 5...
We're still doing this?
Yes! is a comic that came out from Eclipse. The first 10 issues were in color, and then from issue 11 on, it was in black and white. Oddly, you can only pick up a trade paperback of the black and white issues, and that's Zot by Scott McCloud. Scott McCloud's Zot was about a superhero from a parallel universe who comes to our universe, and he's junior high, takes a girl and her brother over to his universe. The brother gets turned into a monkey, and he lives in a super scientific advanced Earth. The main villain in those stories is Art Deco, and they're very kind of superhero-y. But then with issue 11, they came back to Earth, and they became much more down to earth, much more character pieces. And this was really the only comic series Scott McCloud ever did. The next thing he did was Understanding Comics, then Reinventing Comics. He's done a couple graphic novels. But Zot was different from anything on the stands. And Scott McCloud was bringing in all sorts of different ideas to the point where he did a mini-comic of Zot to sort of push the idea of mini-comics. And then he had Matt Feasel doing backup strips in the book. And it's just a book that I love reading. I wish they would reprint the first 10 color issues because they were very comic booky, science fiction, fun, sort of teenage adventure-y. And then when it came back to our Earth, it became a little more down-to-earth, more quiet character pieces. But also you saw Scott McCloud just blossom into this amazing storyteller. And it's a shame that, while he's done some great books with Understanding Comics and Reinventing Comics, that he really hasn't done any more comic series. Joe?
For me, the next one we've touched upon before, but it was one of the big ones that I got into, and I got into it late, and I'm talking X-Men, Uncanny X-Men. The first issue I picked up was 137. And I've said the story
nothing
before.
much happened in that issue.
I've said it before. I picked up issue, I believe it was 123, because Spider-Man was on the cover, and the X-Men had been kidnapped by Arcade, and Spider-Man recognized it. It was a cool thing in the background too, because when the garbage truck that sucked up the X-Men did it like right in front of Doctor Strange's house, so a little bit of Easter eggs in the background. But I was Spider-Man's with the X-Men again, cool. And so, issue 124, no Spider-Man. So I put it back on the shelf and ignored it until 137. Even then, had no fucking clue what I was doing in terms of buying popular comics. So the X-Men, of all the Marvel comics I bought, X-Men was the last, and I came to the party at 137. 138 was kind of cool because it was an origin issue which kind of ran everything up to date. You couldn't do it now unless you drag back the handbooks, because it's really convoluted. But back then it was just one title, and I was able to get backwards about as far as I think 109, maybe actually 108, and then I also picked up I think a 103 or 104. And my old comic partner, Pat, let me read the other issues, including Giant Size. So I was able to get them up to date. This was, of course, when the books were hot, because everybody was paying attention to them. So, I paid like an ungodly $10 a book for some of these comics. And except for 135, which I remember fishing out of a 3-pack at Kmart. Just like, I want that one, but I don't want all of them. Going forward through the 90s, up until 150 was just amazing. They kept bringing things in, although they did suffer one part that I found Claremont did a lot. He brought in, I believe it was an issue where I think 148, where there were all sorts of things going on. Siren meant Banshee, and they did this and they did that, and it was like the Siren Banshee thing disappeared until Excalibur. So it was like all these big things. We found out later one of the reasons was because this was almost entirely rewritten from what was going to originally be the plan, which was, Jean Grey would be lobotomized, and then in issue 150, the Phoenix would return, and they'd have to deal with her once and for all. So pretty much everything was rewritten. 150 was just a kick-ass issue. I still have one in my collection because I just love reading it. The X-Men were firing on all cylinders. They were using Kitty properly. Into the 150s, you have the great 153 where Kitty tells a story to, I can't even think of what Ileana, thank you. And just pretty good. The Brood make their first appearance, which were still pretty damn scary. And then I'm trying to where did is this? Yeah, this is when they got shot out in outer space somehow. And at the time, Professor X didn't know what had happened to them, and so he started up the New Mutants, which was amazing because this was like, oh my god, a second X-Men book. And it started, of course, in a graphic novel, and then when the X-Men came back to Earth, it was a big to-do because they finally, well, who's going to be what, and is Kitty going to be with the New Mutants, or is she going to be with the X-Men, and et cetera, et cetera. I mentioned before the Dire Wraiths and Rom, they show up in 187. They keep rolling forward till you get to issue 200, which was a big trial of Magneto, who had since, I guess, taken up a really bad purple jumpsuit with the letter M on it. But and this issue, if I recall, I think didn't Marvel spring to bring Claremont and Romita Jr. to France so they could actually get an idea of what the city was like? Because I guess it took place. What was it, Prague? When they? Yeah,
what it was, they were actually invited over for a comic convention. And Marvel, would send people to comic conventions all the time back in the 80s. Not now, but back then. And what it is, they they hyped it by saying, we've sent Chris Claremont and John Romita Jr. and Dan Green over to France to, to research, blah, blah, blah. And in an interview later, Claremont said, no, they basically were just looking for a way to write it off.
Well, not everything in this series was good. I mean, there was a couple nice issues when Forge, I think, didn't Forge hit Storm by accident with a mutant neutralizer, took away her powers.
Yes.
She decided to wear a mohawk. But you get issue 198, which was a really beautiful issue done by Barry Windsor Smith. I wonder whatever happened to him. The Secret Wars tie-ins were going on, and I'm telling you, I'm slogging through the omnibus, and I may turn the Secret Wars reading into its own podcast because it's
Look at this regularly as Solo Joe.
It might be the first one I do this year because the first one was actually pretty good, which was 196. They actually advanced the storyline, what's going on in X-Men, and the Beyonder was just kind of bumbling through the story. And he's going to show up again in later issues that I haven't gotten to in the omnibus. A couple Wolverine solo stories, another one 205 that Barry Windsor Smith did. The Marauder showed up. I believe that was the what was the crossover with
Mutant Massacre?
Yeah, that I think is in this particular one. The run of the X-Men ends in the 80s in 257 with the beginning of Acts of Vengeance. So it was a good run along. The time there was just the one X-Men book. New Mutants, a lot of miniseries, of course, the Great Wolverine one that I think Miller and Claremont did. I remember there was an Iceman one that was forgettable, a Nightcrawler that was forgettable, Kitty Pryde Wolverine that was forgettable, although they jammed it into continuity. So, but the big thing was Chris Claremont was doing it. There were sometimes, I wondered, it was always like the villains they fought were super powerful to the point where they could not have been incarcerated by mortals. And so a lot of times they weren't so much defeating villains, they were just kind of deflecting them because the villains would go off to become another subplot later on. And so, but with Chris at the helm, it was fun, it was readable, and it was one of the big ones. Pat and I were doing Weekend Warrior things at the time, so we were buying multiple copies of it. And I don't know how much of this stuff is actually in print in Essentials or Epics or on Marvel Unlimited, but it's a good run. So
that's the run that Lockheed showed up for the first time too, right?
Yeah, he came back with the first Secret Wars.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I know the Essentials got up until at least Inferno, if not beyond.
Which I believe Laurel and Hardy explained is just a mass chemical attack. So,
Dan?
Yes. Oh, let's see. Number 4, right?
Yeah.
Or number 3.
Wait,
6?
what?
It's number 4.
Hi.
Number 4. Okay.
Don't listen to Joe.
Joe's number 7, I think, is what.
For Joe, it's number pi.
Vatican 2.
My number 4 is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the one based on the 80's cartoon show.
From Archie.
Yes, from Archie. I really liked the cartoon show. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it might have been, Kang the Brain. Just the fact that he was around. But I really liked the cartoon show. And so when I started seeing the comics, I started collecting those. And I love the fact they started bringing in different mutants in the same cartoon style, of course. But like in issue 8, I think it was really early in the run, they brought in Manta Ray. And I just I love Manta Rays, so I loved that character. Even though it had I didn't really like the guy's attitude because he was very nature based, but I really liked the character look, so I was willing to put that aside. I'm very superficial when it comes to things like that.
Well, they did that really cool thing where they had Raphael wear like a full body
Suit of black.
that was black.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
They did time travel stories. That was great. They had a shark and a mech. That was kind of interesting. But yeah, I loved the black suit on Raph. I thought that was really cool. Of course, it was once again just the teenager going, I don't want to be like everybody else, so I'm going to wear this. But you're a turtle that does ninja stuff. You're just like the other four or the other three. I don't understand what the problem is here. But yeah, I really liked that series. So that was my number 3. Yeah.
Adam?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Adventures of Kool-Aid Man.
This wasn't
That's
planned.
my number 2.
But my number 4 is also the Ninja Turtles.
Oh.
A mix of the cartoon and the comic. So much stuff happened to me in 1989 as we moved down through here, and Turtles was it. It was like the last cartoon and toy line that I collected before I was too old for all that stuff in middle school, and people were starting to notice that, hey, this guy's still buying toys. What's wrong with him? And it kind of
Did
went
you ever
away
figure out what it was?
It ended up me just not giving a shit because it wasn't their money. I
was gonna say, were we supposed to stop? I picked up a new Transformer yesterday.
Yeah, I guess in my little bumfuck town in southeast Iowa, if by the time you were 11 and 12, if you weren't drinking and smoking and trying to have sex and wanting to play football, there was something wrong with you. And so there was a whole lot wrong with me, except for the wanting to have sex part. So So comics and sex have been pretty much on my mind since I was 8. But
sounds like a Saturday night.
But that has nothing to do with the Ninja Turtles.
Wait, no, I have my new podcast, Comics and Sex. I love it.
So, but Ninja Turtles was kind of more like, again, here I am. I'm introduced to these characters through a cartoon. Find out there's a comic book, and by this time, I had discovered the New England Comics back issue catalog, which
Ooh.
was so cool to get because I would order the Mirage Studios Ninja Turtles books and started getting those in the black and whites. And I got the first issue. It was a 5th printing, and didn't care, just that I had it, and reading it, and they killed Shredder in the first issue. And I remember it just blowing my mind that this comic is so much different than this cartoon show. And it quickly made me kind of forget about the cartoon and just want to read the super violent black and white comics.
Okay, what's really funny about the black and white comics and everything is that everybody had told me that it was this dark, brooding thing. And the first one I picked up, I don't remember the number, but I think it was Raphael, gets up in the middle of the night, he's thirsty, they're on a farm, he goes out to milk the cow and he gets abducted by aliens. The entire thing was this humorous thing of him, this cow, running around an alien vessel to try to get away from it. And I'm reading this going, I don't understand why everybody says this is so different than the cartoon one.
That would have been in the late teens because there was a whole big storyline about the return to New York, I think 1920 and 21 or something, and Shredder was still alive and everything. Yeah.
Didn't he come back
they
in
do go out
issue?
in outer space, and they met Cerebus and all this crazy stuff.
Didn't Shredder come back in issue 50 though?
But he came back first, like in the early 20s.
I just remember because he came back and he basically kicked the living crap out of the Turtles, and that was when they went through that stage where like everybody they were like had guest appearances and guest artists and things. Matter of fact, I think they had a very pivotal appearance in pre-teen Kung Fu Kangaroos, #1, if I recall. It just the kangaroos were running and they ran in one of the turtles. Which way did this guy go? Over there. Thank you. Oh, that was it. So if you don't have it, you better get to your eBays and be looking for it.
So yeah, the Turtles, that was like, I don't know, it introduced me to like the black and white stuff and indie comics, just from a cartoon being on CBS Saturday mornings.
So of the toys, did you have the Pterodome?
No, I never really got the Turtles play sets at that time. It was just the figures. I didn't have any vehicles or anything of it. It was weird. It was like I said, the last toy line I collected, but it was one of those things where I was starting to get a little bit embarrassed by it, and my parents were like, I don't really know that you should still be buying this stuff, Adam, and I never went for like the vehicles or play sets. It was just, I have $5 so I can buy another figure.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh. The eye launched off the top. It made a great thunk against my little sister.
Is there anything better than a great thunk against a younger sibling?
I can think of a few.
Well, at that age. So, Cory, #4.
#4.
Quickly.
Is another book from Eclipse that actually started in a British anthology called Warrior. And Warrior was kind of this amazing anthology that had most British stuff was aimed at kids and teens. And Des Skin, who was the editor of Warrior, who'd worked at Marvel, thought that he could do a series based that would aim at adults. And the first one of the stories from that anthology that came to the U.S. was Miracle Man.
Oh.
And another thing that people don't much remember about Miracle Man was Eclipse tried a new format where they had cheaper paper, not as many pages, and sold it for 95 cents.
And what a lot of people also don't realize is that when those first issues shipped, very, very few of them were mint.
You're right.
A lot of people were pissed off. I mean, Pat and I were, we're buying multiple copies to sell at cons, and we were aware of the Miracle Man. But when they got there, it was kind of like, well, you got a choice. You can either take these the way they are or hope that they replace them, and they probably won't. So very little of the print run can be considered truly mint.
And it wasn't very long till they ran out of the British comics to reprint. So they very quickly started using other artists, such as Chuck Austin, Bissett. Didn't Bissett or Totalman draw a few issues? And the rights got all messed up, but those first 16 issues by Alan Moore were some of the most amazing comics. And just absolutely loved it. It was one of the first comics that sort of did we're going to do superheroes as aimed at adults. They had a birth right there on the page, and they actually used an anatomy handbook for the birth. And if you read the editorial, it's like, yes, the drawings are taken from this book. But it was more that Alan Moore sort of took this quaint old 50s idea, turned it dark, and just went nuts with it. Without Watchmen, you wouldn't have had Dark Knight Returns, you wouldn't have I'm sorry, without Miracle Man, you wouldn't have had Watchmen, you wouldn't have had Dark Knight Returns, you wouldn't have had all those, because that and Swamp Thing were really the first books where mainstream comics became literary. And the fact that Marvel has kind of boofed the return of Miracle Man is the amount of money they spent getting the rights, and the fact that, oh yeah, these Neil Gaiman issues, sorry. And there's not, they don't have a complete Alan Moore book of it. It's baffling why the reprints of those are so poorly handled. Joe?
The next one for me is, we've talked about it before, the Thor run that Walt Simonson did. I'm trying to find it here. What was it? 337. Again, a mind-blowing issue because out of nowhere, Beta Ray Bill grabs the hammer, disappears, and a 12-year-old mind at the end where Donald Blake's yelling, "Father!" And you're thinking, oh man, is he screwed? Because, and of course it starts out great because he gets picked up by a couple guys. They grab his cane, they toss him in a car, and it's Nick Fury. Nick Fury's known he's Donald Blake all along. So it's not, secret identities. No, S.H.I.E.L.D. knows a lot. Nick Fury knows a lot. So just beautiful issue. The style was great. And as it went in, of course, by 338, I think your dad's going to know it. Cock-a-doom, boom, he's gone. But what they did...
Did you say cock-a-doom?
Oh, damn straight. There were tons of awesome sound effects that Walt Simonson used. Cock-a-doom, And that run up until 350. Nowadays, 350 would be like a $9 multiple part issue with tons of reprints and the same amount of story you would have gotten in a regular comic. But it tied into the Marvel Universe by, I call it the Red Sky Syndrome, but it was basically also in every comic book had a snowstorm going on because the whole world was snowing. And they got the Avengers involved with a crossover that you can pick up or you don't have to pick up. But the finale, another long frickin' 30 days when, again, this is a, 30 years old story, so I don't think I'm ruining anything.
Spoilers!
Odin tumbled into the crack with Surtur and disappeared, and both Loki and Thor are like, "Father!" I mean, it was a long 30 days. This entire run were long 30 days in between issues. Now just go buy the Epic Collection and read it in one. And this has got to be heading to an omnibus soon because just a phenomenal run. What was really cool about the whole thing is they made Asgard interesting. There were characters in Asgard. There were most of the time Asgard is just a place you go to advance the plot. You really don't care what's going on in Asgard because, Thor's got to get back to Earth and fight the bad guy. But damn, Walt Simonson could have just written the entire series on Asgard. I got bummed when Thor actually started going back to Earth and started fighting normal villains. I was like, no, I want to stay in Asgard. They made the characters much more interesting. There's a one-shot that was done by Bob Harris and Butch Geis, 356. It's not in any of the reprints, but it's fun to pick up, just kind of a done-in-one. It's a Hercules story. But then you get back to the action. It ties into the, there's a Secret War tie-in too, but it ties into, what was the one where they went and basically destroyed the entire Morlocks?
Mutant Massacre.
Mutant Massacre, thank you. That was going on in X-Force, X-Men, and Thor had a vital part in it. And what was neat was when the other X-Men went down into the sewers again, they found no signs of any Morlocks because Thor had made a funeral pyre and basically scoured the entire area clean. Not to mention watching the Marauders run like hell when they were starting to fight a Thor. There were little tiny crossovers that I loved because as a kid in Marvel, this is what I loved about Marvel. Again, all of Asgard's on Earth because the Rainbow Bridge is destroyed. when Sif gets to Earth, she's able to, go back and forth. She talks to Beta Ray Bill. What have you been doing? Oh, there was a minor skirmish with something called Dire Race. This was like the big fight in Rom. And it was just a little fight over here in Thor. But they thought enough of us readers to actually tie in this stuff. Because we'd be sitting there, hey, what about this tie-in in Rom? Well, they mention it in Thor. So, just a little brief thing. And, of course, the whole run comes up to its conclusion in 382, and it's just, I think that was considered the 300th issue of Thor published because it didn't start with a number 1. And it was hard to go from Walt Simonson into Ron Frenz and Tom DeFalco, even though it was a Secret Wars flashback. The one thing that I disliked afterwards was Ron Frenz was trying to ape Kirby. And I guess he was told to do that, but I did not like it at all. And he was on up through issue 400, a little weaker than the previous run. And they kind of did what I don't like with Thor. They made Asgardians just kind of a background nobody. It's like, we got a bunch of Asgardians. Who are they? It doesn't matter. They could be little pegs from the Game of Life because they're just interchangeable. For the Sif, the Warriors 3, and nobody else. But, of course, because Enchantress is never around. And of course, how could I forget the Run to Hell, where the Executioner makes his last stand, which was fabulous. So just a good run. I think about that time, though, after issue 400, I dropped it because it just wasn't doing it for me anymore. And the 90s, I think the runs of Thor go into the 400s, 410 or something before you get into 1990. But that run, the Simonson run, and I hung around till issue 400. Those are actually pretty fun, and I have those Simonson runs in the trades. I actually bought the Graffiti Illustrated, had like a limited signed edition that Simonson himself had autographed. I since sold it and just got the paperbacks, and my daughter has them now, and she reads them at a snail's pace. But boy, if I had them, I'd probably, just talking about it, I damn it, I want to get these back and read through them. But, there'll hopefully be an omnibus soon. I'll just pick that up and call it even.
Omnibus.
Bye. Dan?
I was just listening to the omnibus.
I'm an addict.
Omnibuy!
You really?
I build my house of Omnibuy. Don't ask me why.
Well, wait till the episode after this one where Joe and I go through previews and I point out that there are like 7 omnibuses coming out in the recent previews, and I go, oh, man, I gotta buy them.
And then I'm looking at those, and I won't even mention that, my God, DC must have heard my love of Marvel reprints because they're trying to break me. But that's next episode, kids. Now, for number 2, 3, 5, 12, 16.
Yeah.
Ike?
My number 3 is actually is Batman: The Killing Joke. I really like that story. To understand my mentality at times, I will tell a story that my dad hates the fact I would tell it because it tells something of him too.
He's not listening.
No, actually he might be.
Hi, Dan's dad. We'll call you DD.
DD.
And if you are listening, go see our advertisers. These guys. That's right, here at the Solitaire Rose Radio Network, we have ads, and our first sponsor is me. That's right, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. I have my first book out with Dangerous Dan Mohr. It's the first 100 strips of our online web strip, Worldwide News, the story of the lowest rated cable news network. And you can get yourself a copy with commentary, with all sorts of extras, with signatures and everything. Just email Dan over at lordshadowflame@gmail.com. Our top sponsor, who's been with us since day one, is DreamHost. DreamHost.com. You need yourself a website, and DreamHost.com is the #1 web host in the whole known universe. Just head over to DreamHost.com, put in the code KRAYZ, KRAYZ, get $20 off your first year. How can you beat that? Our other sponsor is Graze, GRAZE.com. Healthy snacks for a healthy lifestyle. Just head over to Graze, put in the code CORYS3R5P. Your first and fifth box are free. You can get them weekly. You can get them bi-weekly. You can get them monthly. You can just order a whole bunch of them. It's great stuff to keep you away from the vending machine at work. Now, if you would like to leave a comment for any of the podcasts that we do, we'd love those. Go ahead and email us at solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com, or you can call 952-856-0519. Operators are standing by. Okay, it's just a place that will record your calls, but we'll play them on the air. We'll answer your questions. We love getting feedback. Tell us what you think. Ask a question. Suggest a topic. Be a guest. Send us your stuff. SolitaireRoseNetwork@gmail.com. If you would like to advertise on any of the Solitaire Rose radio shows, you can. Just email us at SolitaireRoseNetwork@gmail.com. Subject advertising. Thanks.
I was wondering when that was going to get in there.
I'm like you with the stuff about the convention. I'm going to sneak it in on these episodes.
I think I just made my dad get used. I'm not sure.
Unclean.
Dad, if you are listening, Cory's just used you. Please go take a shower.
After he buys stuff from our advertisers.
Yeah.
Killing joke.
What?
Killing joke.
The reason that some of my mentality is that before I was 10 years old, my dad showed me both Apocalypse Now and Clockwork Orange.
Oh, man. Oh, my. I saw Clockwork Orange in college and came out of it going, I'm really offended and disturbed by this film.
I think I like your dad.
I like it, too. The first video I got to choose to have as my own was Amadeus.
Well, that's good. I like, that's...
It's cultural, but it's fucked up.
And it's great, too, because when we saw it in the theater, there's that scene where he's in his wife's lap, and it was the hugest boobs on the screen. And my buddy was with me, and the audience was like, he went, "Gah." Started laughing.
Okay, we're going off on a tangent here, but have you... I'm continuing the tangent. I'm trying to remember the name of this movie. There's a movie where basically a guy finds a genie that had been put in the lamp around year zero. And so he's showing him around during Christmas. And one of the first one, he brings him to the genie to a movie, and it's like Terminator 2 or 1 or 2. He comes out of the movie. He's like, "Oh my God! Did you see that woman's breasts? They were huge." Anyway,
so class on the show.
Yeah. So the mentality, the fact that the Killing Joke, I mean, was kind of when they started to really get into the darker side of the Joker again, after a long time of just kind of being the more clown than crime, and just the sadistic nature of the Joker in that story, I just absolutely love. The idea of just the mental anguish that he's putting Commissioner Gordon through is something I would love to do to somebody.
Oh, God!
Wolfie, you have permission to grab him and keep him.
Yeah, I'm afraid. I don't want to touch him at this point.
Shot through the spine.
I know. So, yeah, okay, folks. I have this idea that I love the way the Joker is, and I have voices in my head and think I'm multiple people. I think I may have a problem, but you know what? I'm okay with this.
I don't know if Cory and those guys will be after a while, but you know. Cory, how would you like to be Oracle? Anyway,
There's a reason I don't go to conventions anymore, and that's one of them.
Yeah, I think I used to give Cory grief for not going to conventions, but I don't think I'm going to do that anymore.
You're welcome, Cory. So anyway, that's one of the.
So go pick up Killing Joke.
Yeah, it's a great story. You'll love it. Adam, what's your number 3? Please tell us.
All right. We have half a brain on this one.
Please be Archie's.
It's also Batman, but it's the Batman 1989 movie.
Ooh.
Where I just I knew who Batman was going into that. I'd had a couple of little Batman comics. Like there's the I had that digest reprint of the Untold Legends of the Batman, and I think that was my first exposure to John Byrne without knowing who John Byrne was at that time.
And another book where John Byrne left in a huff.
Yes. But Batman, a lot of stuff happened in 1989, and Batman for me in comics, and Batman 89 was it. I just remember going and seeing the movie multiple times at the theater. I had like a Batman T-shirt for every day of the week, and picked up. You know, it's funny because we talk about, well, why don't these movies translate into comic book sales? And I guess I'm a good example of why not, because like I went and I picked up a couple of books, and it maybe lasted for like 3 or 4 months, and then I was done reading Batman. So I don't know why. I think it was like the start of A Lonely Place for Dying.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just like, oh, okay. This isn't quite what I want. So, but Batman 89, just the beginning, I think, of me really knowing that I love this stuff, and wow, this is what they can do, and like thinking I was super smart about stuff because I had this one shirt that Batman was like purple on it, and it had like beaten up all these thugs, and somebody was like, oh, that's a cool Batman shirt, and me being like 12 at the time, thinking I know everything, like, it's not Batman, it's the Dark Knight.
Who the hell are you talking about? It's Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not pure Adam West. It's not Batman.
So I have no qualms about coming on these 2 episodes and embarrassing myself with my lack of knowledge of things when I was a child. So thinking I knew everything.
Well, of course you do.
Yes.
I remember coming out of the Superman movie and going, they got his origin wrong. Thankfully, John Byrne fixed it in Man of Steel.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Thankfully, Bendis will fix it again in Man of Steel.
Yes.
Yeah.
What a
then
time
30
we live
years
in.
later, somebody else will do another bi-weekly event.
Well, you got to do that every so often.
Yeah. Because, I don't know.
Because
Bendis
sales.
isn't John Byrne. So.
Well, Kirby, when he came over to Marvel, when Kirby came over to DC, he kind of did a revamp on Superman. He's the one who created Morgan Edge and did all the Jimmy Olsen stuff that bled into the other stuff. That was when they had Superman, the Daily Planet got bought by Morgan Edge, who was a agent of Darkseid. And boy, they deep sixed that pretty fast.
Yeah, that's something I don't even know what you're talking about. So.
Yep, you got to read those Jimmy Olsen issues that Kirby did.
Do I have to?
I was gonna say,
Yes,
I'll get right on that.
because it's Kirby, and it's awesome. All of the New God stuff is awesome, but we already did the 70s.
Jimmy Olsen's a new god.
Cory, number 3.
Yes, Jimmy Olsen was part of the New God series.
Yeah, that's where Darkseid had his first appearance.
That's
And that's
right.
where Don Rickles showed up.
Yeah, and his cousin Goody Rickles.
Wait a minute. Wait.
Go read
Darkseid's first appearance was in Jimmy Olsen.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh my god.
New God to you.
I'm not sure I can like the character anymore.
I may have to hit Dan over the head with my Kirby's Fourth World Omnibus.
Considering it's got a misprint in it, you don't have to worry about damaging it.
That's right. My number 3 is a comic that I have a tattoo of. In my
Omaha the Cat Girl?
Oh, my.
Cat Dancer.
Yeah.
Cherry Pop-Tart?
Oh, I wish.
Kool-Aid Man.
No. Mage by Matt Wagner. I have Grendel on one bicep and Mage on the other. Mage was, well, the story of how I discovered Mage is pretty interesting. I went to the Chicago Comic Con in '84, and Kamiko was right there at the front door as you walked in. And I got there early, and the person at the Kamiko booth said, "Hey, have you read Mage yet?" I haven't even heard of Mage. And he went over and they had photocopies. They had issue 1 and they have photocopies of issue 2. And I started looking through it and I was just blown away. It was just so cool. What it was, this is a story, and you didn't realize it until like 4 or 5 issues in, that Kevin Matchstick, the lead character, is he's the current incarnation of King Arthur. And as you go through the story, the characters that are around him, you find out that what their Arthurian counterparts were.
Their Asgardian counterparts?
Yes, their Asgardian, their
He's
Arthurian
confusing
counterparts.
his mythologies. Common geek problem.
And I had just read and fallen in love with the book Hero of 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell, which was,
Bruce Campbell's brother.
It's about the heroic cycle and how all of our myths tend to tell the same story over and over.
And you
and
can
Matt
get your
Wagner
cycles
does
to
the same
sync.
thing. I'm just going to barrel through, Joe. And
He's used to it by now.
You said you read the book?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
And-
don't watch the thing with Joseph Campbell trying to explain it.
Oh, I saw that in college.
Oh my god, that guy's an asshole.
Yeah, he is, but it doesn't matter because I like his philosophy. It was him
you're
and
Christian.
Bill.
That's why Ayn Rand is so popular.
He and Bill Moyers doing that PBS series, The Power of Myth. But anyway, I remember when the final issue came out, the woman I was dating at the time was hooked on it too. And we knew the day it was going to come out. It was the Wednesday before Christmas. And we were, it was winter break, and we were hanging out, and it's like, okay, the comic shop opens at 11. We have to make sure that we're there to get that 15th issue of Mage. And I actually had to buy 2 so we could both read it in the car or the parking lot after it came out. Just a phenomenal book. The final part of the Mage trilogy is finally coming out now. So from 1984 to now, to do 45 issues. I'm really patient, aren't I? But yeah, Mage is my number 3. Joe, number 2.
Well, funny you should say 2, because number 2 has 2 in it. The miniseries, which we've talked about before, Batman: The Dark Knight, and of course, Watchmen. These 2 books were utterly mind-blowing. And by this time when they came out, I'd already been through college, so mind-blowing things didn't happen as often as they did. But the fervor around Dark Knight is something that just I can't even describe, because, I guess you look at the first issue, it came out in '86. People were lined up to get it. they lined up to get issue 2. They lined up when they finally came out with the hardcover book, and there were 2 hardcover books. It had a Warner Brother edition and then a direct market edition. Graffiti Designs had a special super edition. Nowadays, I joke, we're waiting for the omnibus of Walt Simonson's Thor, but the 3 editions, when they first came out, there were multiple printings of the book. And I think, wasn't there a good delay between 3 and 4?
Oh, a long delay.
Yeah. Not Camelot 3000 long. That was almost a whole year. Watchmen had a better track record. And again, another mind-blowing book. Watchmen, I had the issues. I bought multiples to sell at cons. I had the Graffiti Design book. Right now I have the Absolute edition. I have an actual hardcover edition that I like to read. And then I have a first print somewhere down in my vast accumulation of stuff. Just another phenomenal issue of a crazy run. And every time I read it, I find or I notice something new. That's how meticulously detailed Alan Moore did it. That's how brilliantly Dave Gibbons was able to draw it. I got to admit, I am excited when people say, okay, we're going to bring back the Watchmen, Beyond Watchmen. Okay, didn't quite work out. The Doomsday Clock, I'm interested in. I think they're good characters. I would love to see early stories with them, but the Master's never coming back. And my attitude is someone else is going to play in the playground, so be it. If we had the attitude that the Watchmen's untouchable, the characters, we never would have Superman. We'd never have Batman because they would have stopped the minute Joe and got off it or Bob Kane quit or whatever. So, and even if they suck, we still got Watchmen. And I actually just finished reading Batman the Dark Knight last week. I just happened to have a copy of it I brought with me, and I flipped through it, and it's like I'm still discovering things that I either forgot or I just didn't notice the first time around. And the unfortunate side effect of both these books is that because they, how did you say it, Cory? Deconstruct the heroes or kind of win. That everybody said, oh my God, if this sells, everybody must be that way. And it brought in I think you mentioned it, Adam, the really dark, stupid, assholey Batman that, finally he's starting to break out of it. But if you have never, and I mean ever, read these, just pause this podcast and go find a copy. I don't think they're online like the way Marvel Unlimited is, but, get it from the library, find a cheap copy, go buy a brand new one, and you are in for an absolute. What? Somebody can't hear me?
No, I
couldn't hear you.
An absolute what?
Reginald, tell them what kind of time you'd have reading these books.
I would have a wonderful time reading these books, especially.
That's all. Get out. That's all I wanted to hear from you. That's guest appearance. That's all we have you in the contract for.
But jeez. What about the?
Go, Wolfie! Get him out of here! Get him out of here!
Got him.
You give him a few seconds, and he tries to take an hour. I'm telling you. Who's next? Dan, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is the Transformer series. Again, I was a huge Transformer fan when the cartoons came out. When I found out that they had comic books, I didn't necessarily know what comic books were, but I didn't care. I got them. Okay, my dad got them, and my mom got them, and I read them, and they went, "What the hell are these?" And I said, "I don't know." So, but I loved what they did with the character. At first, it was just, of course, the limited series that they were just going to do the first 4 that was based on the pilot. But then the comics did well, so they continued on. I love actually the 75th, or not 75, 81 is when they ended the series, and it said 81 in a 4-issue miniseries. But I loved the depth that they started going into the characters because when I started reading them more, because of course they didn't do that in the cartoon. It was just like, okay, that's Rodimus Prime or that's Optimus Prime. He's the first leader. He's the second leader. Blah 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 blah. What'd you say? And so I loved learning more about the character, the idea of the characters having more depth to them and actual different personalities, even more so. So I just loved what they did with it.
What'd you think of the movie? Shit!
The movie was good. I like the which movie? the live action or the cartoon?
Well, cartoon. The live action never exists. Doesn't exist. It mopied in my universe. It does not exist.
Okay, look. I don't. If you didn't like that movie, I don't know what you were expecting to see. Okay, I went into that movie expecting three things. I expected robots.
Five things.
No, 3 things. I expected
Nobody
robots.
expects the Spanish Inquisition.
I expected them to be able to turn into cars and jets and stuff like that, and I expected explosions. Those are the 3 things I expected. I got them in spades, and then I got a plot.
Were all gray. You couldn't tell who was who.
Yeah, you could.
Oh, you couldn't.
Yeah, you could.
Oh.
Megatron was the one in the ice.
You disappoint me, Stars.
And actually, I will say, I went and saw that movie with my wife, with Jules, just before we got married.
And she was.
We were both. No, she was. Well, not as much as I was at the time. The movie actually got her to really get into it. But she was a fan before it too. But we went in and saw it, and we were watching the helicopter land, and then of course when it starts to transform, it used the sound from the cartoon, and we both lost it. It was just like, and then when Optimus Prime came up and Peter Cullen was the voice again, well, again
That
it was
was-
like, huh?
Wasn't the guy who did Megatron the voice of Megatron?
No,
No, it's Hugo Weaving.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was. I thought it was because
It
I
was
didn't
not
get.
Frank Welker.
Darn.
no. Frank Welker took over though in Age of Extinction, the 4th one.
Cool.
Yeah, and Frank Welker was doing the voice of Soundwave.
Now, the question I have: did either you or Adam? Did you get to go to BotCon when it was here in '86?
No.
You mean 98?
90. I don't know what it was. No,
And
because
no, I
it
didn't
was
live
in.
in
It was at the
Minneapolis.
River Center, and I actually went to it. It was actually kind of fun. I didn't get into the whole, what we're going to meet the guy. I don't think they had any vocal artists that I was really gaming on. But I went in there thinking, oh man, we're going to have some vintage Transformers, because that was something Hot Comics had tons of. Was
Yes.
vintage Transformers in the box. I mean, just brilliant stuff. And so I went thinking, oh, this is going to be so cool. And there was hardly any toys. They were all prints. They were all posters. Actually, if you have the program guide, if you went to it, my name's actually in it because I went to it. I don't have it anymore. I was looking at it like, geez, do I want to keep this? Nah, I blew it out on eBay. But it was a lot of fun to go to. And, of course, it's never been back here. For the longest time, I actually had the exclusive toys that actually said, St. Paul, Minnesota, and the date with BotCon.
Nice.
But and I've never seen them show up on eBay. My guess is I probably sold them while I owned one of the Hot Comics. But I'd love to get them again. So it was kind of fun.
Yeah, I've never actually been to a BotCon. I really want to, but I've never been one. You haven't either, you said, Adam?
Nope. Never had a chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we put Cory to sleep.
Yeah.
He sounds like Wheelie.
I know, he doesn't even know the reference.
So, Adam, what's
Yes.
your number 2?
It's a Three Stooges reference.
Yeah. Corey can go back to sleep.
Oh, okay.
Awesome.
Because my number 2 is also Transformers.
You guys, I've been saying for like how many years now, you guys need to get together and do a Transformers podcast, even if it's only once every 3-4 months. That way I don't have to put up.
Till all are one.
That's right.
Two all are one.
Cory can't
That's
deal
kinda
with
creepy.
this now.
What'd you say?
I said Cory can't deal with this now.
Actually, I was saying that the whole till all are one, that's really kind of creepy if you think about it.
It's like any religious thing.
I don't know what you're talking about. I love the idea. Cory, do you want to be one?
I'm going to tap out. Let me know when I can wake up, okay?
All right. So this is it's more of Adam is into a toy and a cartoon. But this is where Marvel and their partnership with Sunbow played into it, because Transformers cartoons would be on in the afternoon, and then they would show commercials with animation for the Transformers comics. And they did the same with G.I. Joe. So seeing that and knowing there was a comic, I wanted more. I just wanted more Transformers, any Transformers I could get. And that was that's the comic that started it, Transformers number 6, May 19th, 1985. I remember it was a Sunday morning, and I said, Dad, would you take me to Hy-Vee and get me a comic book? And he drove me over to Hy-Vee, and there was Transformers number 6 in the spinner rack, and I grabbed that, and I remember sitting there, and it probably took me 2 hours to read this book, because it was not just, reading it and loving these things and looking at everything, but also, really starting to piece together how a comic book worked, how you followed along the panel layouts and everything, and trying to decipher like the different tricks in writing. I remember there was a page where this issue, Megatron and Shockwave fight each other for leadership of the Decepticons. And there was a page where the last panel to get you to turn, like they like to do on that page, Megatron saying, "I'm leader of the Decepticons," but Decepticons gets cut off before he can finish the word. And I remember flipping back and forth from that page to the next, trying to figure out why that didn't get completed.
Wasn't he on some bridge or something that teleports people?
Yeah, the space.
And he kind of ends up getting zapped because the toy line had gotten rid of Optimus Prime and Megatron.
Yeah.
And so they were trying to get rid of them both.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, Optimus existed on a disk drive because his body was dead. And that's when Megatron was beginning to remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, Megatron is, I think Shockwave hires the Predacons.
Yes, issue 25. I'm looking at it now.
Bridge. Yeah. Yeah, my God. Those were issues 24 and 25.
Yep.
And I don't know, it was so cool because I was putting together that they were telling different stories than what the cartoon would do, because I thought, oh, this will just be like the cartoon. And that issue 6, it wasn't. So much had happened in those first 5 issues. By the time I got to issue 6 was there, all the Autobots were dead. And they were all like hanging upside down from the rafters of the Ark. And Optimus Prime was still alive, but it was just his head, like on a platform. And they were going to use the creation matrix that he had to like build a new army of Decepticons, and he like transferred it into Buster Witwicky, and the only Autobot that wasn't dead was Ratchet, and he was the pacifist, and he was this big puss, and he wouldn't fight anybody, and it came down to like him like finding the Dinobots in the swamps, and he got them to fight Megatron, and it was crazy. It was just so different than the cartoon. So. And then I made it to about issue 37 or 38 before I decided that I don't like Transformers much anymore and jumped over to Joe.
Oh man! Why did you bring me back? I could have just stayed at the hatred.
You know what happened is that I was such an odd kid.
Lose your virginity?
Not at that point.
Oh, okay. That was good.
That would be That would be like 11 years later during an episode of Doctor Who on PBS. So anyway,
okay, that's just another reason for. Okay, Adam, you lost me at the Transformer. You said you were done with the Transformer. I had such respect for you.
yeah. Well,
And then you tell me it took you 10 years later to get laid?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And my reason for getting out of Transformers won't surprise you that it took that long to have sex. So,
Yeah.
so the 1984 and the 1985 toy lines are all in scale with one another, pretty much, right, Dan?
Yeah,
So
as much as they could be, yeah.
yeah, between Diaclone and the Microman lines. So we got the 1986 line comes out, and none of these new characters are really in scale with the old figures. They've pretty much lost all of the die cast.
Uh-huh.
And at 10 years old, I was like, fuck this, this is stupid. I hate this.
Did you ever watch Beast Wars?
No.
Okay, there's an amazing line in it, which is great because if you watch Beast Wars, the first season, it very much feels like it's its own show. It's this whole new universe. Okay, they're not doing anything. And then in second season, you come to find out, no, the entire show is locked right into the original series to the point where what it is the new Megatron is on Earth trying to find the Ark in the past. Yeah.
Nice.
It's awesome. But the thing is, when they find the Ark, the Maximals that they're called now walk in, look at it, and one of them goes, "Oh my God, that ship doesn't look like it was built. It looks like it was poured." At which point, the Optimus character looks at the camera and goes, "Die cast construction. It's a lost art." I thought that was great.
When these toys first hit, I was working at Sears, and a lady come up with a Megatron, and she said, "I think this is broken. I can't get it to work." And I look at it, and I called this kid over who was looking at the catalog, and, "Hey, transform this." Gone. Put it back. Robot. I said, "Don't worry. The kids will figure it out. It's just beyond us."
That Megatron figure's a bitch to transform.
Oh,
yes, it
the kid
is.
just flipped through it. I mean, these toys were so cool. We actually, that was kind of our college thing, was to pick up. We got every single toy up to Fort Max, which I believe my buddy ordered from the Sears catalog. And when I first got Hot Comics, the collection kind of went between the two of the major guys. I was kind of on the fringe because I was just buying the ones I liked. I got like Metroplex. I got the Pepsi mail away Transformer. I never.
Oh yeah,
Optimus. I never got an original. And I think I had a Hot Rod. Some other. But these guys, they went all out. I remember they were down in Texas. They found a warehouse where they were stocked. They came back with boxes of these Transformers. Opened up every single one. They put them on the pool table, the most awesome display you'd ever see. And of course, I'm thinking, boy, if they had never opened those. But eventually, they ended up in my shop, and I ended up selling them for these guys. And you should have seen. I mean, it was like a Sharktacon feeding frenzy. People are like, "Oh my God, you got a Predaking! How much?"
What I want, I'm gonna
like
take
$100.
it.
Would you take any? Would you take 80? I said, "No, I'm taking $100. You're not going to find it anywhere else." And to this day, my buddies and I, they're like, "Well, what's a Fort Max sealed worth now?" I don't know, 5,000, maybe more. But yeah, that's it. We got them all, and then we came across the same thing you did. We were going to continue buying them past the Fort Max line, but they just went. The colors went garnished. They were primary colors. They were ugly. They didn't transform. They were all plasticky, and we just kind of, we're going to stop at this. This is about
Action Masters.
Action Masters. I have a lot of those.
Yeah. They were cartoon accurate.
Yes, they were.
Back when they did they came back with the original Generation 2, which were basically Generation 1, but in a blister pack, not in a box. Yep. And then they changed the colors. Grimlock went from the cool gray and gold to some pink and green thing. And if actually had them. They're both very valuable, but so. And even now, it kills me because I'll go to like Toys R Us and I'll see they'll come out with the remade version of like Inferno for $50, and I'm like, I don't buy action figures at $50 because I want to open them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What was your guys' first figure?
Metroplex.
Ooh, my first figure. Honestly, I can't remember if it was Mirage or Optimus Prime. I think it was Mirage.
Oh, Mirage was another one of those that could like just break on you in a moment.
Yes, it could.
That like pencil lead thin little peg was the only thing that held his waist in place.
Yeah.
We had that fun when we were trying to pose them, we'll just lean this one against somebody. What about you, Adam? What was your first?
Thundercracker. In
nice.
November 1984 at the Toys R Us in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
I got one via mail away eventually. Because they must have had like extras that they didn't want a box, so they just, if you send in a certain amount of those Transformer points, you can get
points.
this.
Yes.
Yeah. My buddy, who he bought all sorts of stuff afterwards, but he kept Laserbeak, Jazz, and he still has Reflector.
Okay.
That was a mail away.
Yeah. I have a soft spot for the Omnibots.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Now, are any of you reading the current stuff at IDW?
No.
Off and on.
I have a friend at work who reads them, and he says, they're really good because it's like one massive story going forward. And he said the best way to do it is either pick up one of the issues where they have the actual timeline. That's something IDW does with all their books, be it Ghostbusters or X-Files or whatever. There's an actual timeline, so you know what issue to read in what order, especially since it goes through multiple issues. But there's also, they have the omnibus.
I know.
They're not the big omnibus like Cory builds his home on them, just a smaller one that has a good chunk of story. And I'm looking for number one. I have yet to find it other than, full retail. But he says, if you can read those, he really enjoys those.
Yeah.
If you can get for cash.
Yeah, like I said, I read them off and on. I really like the story. It's basically when I can afford it. I want to get those omnibuses and omnibus, whatever. Yeah. And just read the entire series because, oh my God, just some of the stuff that I've read is really cool. What's the most recent Transformer you've ever bought?
Oh, I bought a little itty bitty hot rod. It's probably half the size of an actual Matchbox car, and it transforms, sort of. I mean, just one little transformer. And I bought it because it's actually kind of scaled to the Matchbox cars. I mean, not the weird Matchbox things where trucks and cars are the same, but I mean, it actually fits the size. And I bought it from some guy for like $4 online. Free shipping from Hong Kong. I don't understand how he did it, but it was pretty cool.
Nice. How
I've
about you,
been
Adam?
out of the Transformers collecting game for maybe 4 years now, 5. I don't have any more. I don't have any of them left except for a Generation 1 Thunder. I think the last one I bought was Generation Skids.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to break this up.
Hold on. I have to answer my own.
But I have to leave here in about 15 to 20 minutes.
You should probably not plan to work on a special appearance podcast because we could have filled this sucker. You could have probably just taken the entire Transformer section and made it its own podcast. We just would have given you an extra week. But no,
maybe I will.
Timeline. I was going to talk about the Transformer train set I got, but no, we'll skip that. And
fine, Cory, what's your number 2?
No, it's my number 2. We already talked about the X-Men.
We should have done that while we were talking Transformers.
We've already talked about the X-Men. The X-Men is my number 2, but a little more limited than Joe. For me, the X-Men kind of faded after Paul Smith left, to the point where by issue 200, I no longer cared. And I've talked in the past about how issues 191 and 192 were almost the final nails in the coffin to me, because an old Conan villain showed up, and it was 2 issues of everybody being tortured. Spider-Man was hung up and ripped apart, and it was just 2 issues of really poorly drawn torture sequences. And then it never happened. So it was like, well, those 2 issues were kind of a waste of time. And by the time it got to issue 200, I no longer cared. But that Byrne run, leading back into the second Cockrum run, and then Paul Smith, who wasn't on the book long enough, god damn it. No. Paul Smith's X-Men run is one of the most beautiful runs in comics. And the fact that Paul Smith doesn't do a lot of comics is heartbreaking to me, because every comic he's done I've loved. I loved his Doctor Strange story. I loved Leave It to Chance, the fantasy story he did over at Image. But by issue 200, to me, it felt like Claremont had lost all control of plotting, and stuff was just happening. There was no build-up anymore. There was no progression. It was just stuff would happen, and Claremont wouldn't have set it up except in his brain, and he forgot to tell the reader about the setup. So by issue 200, after 200, I really kind of lost interest in the X-Men. But man, the Byrne, Cockrum, Paul Smith runs were just phenomenal comics. And I think the entire industry spent 2 decades ripping it off.
See,
Joe?
I found that interesting because I actually enjoyed those 2 issues you panned, mostly because that villain had appeared earlier in the Marvel team-up where Red Sonja popped up. And, I thought it was real until, like you said, Spidey dies, and then I realized, okay, they're going to just say nothing happened. And on the plus side, Captain America remembered everything. And I thought, well, good, now maybe they'll bring the Marvel X-Men into the real Marvel universe, because they were always their own separate thing. They didn't, but so anyways, my last one, and Cory's heard me rave about this one before, and I'm gonna highly recommend it to Dan and Adam. Tales of the Bean World by Larry Mulder. The reason why I recommend it is because the omnibus is in Dark Horse right now, so you can pick up the first 23 issues, which are long out of print, or 21 issues, because this baby came out in '85. When it first came out, I walked into Dreamhaven, and this was back when they were in their Dinkytown, one of their 3 Dinkytown locations. And I came in, and Al Payne, who is working Dynamite Comics now, I always ask him, what's new, what's cool? Well, this Tales of the Bean World's pretty cool. I read it, and it just blew my mind. I mean, Bean World is basically, it's like a weird fantasy dimension operating under its own rules. It's got a hero, Mr. Spook, artist Dreamer Beanish, intellectual Professor Garbanzo. It's not really about destruction or violence. It's about the relationship between different inhabitants, forces of nature. It's kind of a process, not really. It's just an amazing book. And Larry doesn't have it come out often enough. But what he's done is, instead of having individual issues, he comes out in these small hardcover hard sets. So you can get those through Dark Horse as well. There's 4 of them. But if you just want to pick up the omnibus and go through the whole thing, I highly recommend it to anybody. And the fact that a book from the 80s that was obscure is still available now, so someone can check it out, it's just amazing. And I think anybody who's read it, you're in for a treat. It's fascinating book to read. And if you can dig up the original issues, they're fairly cheap online, because he also has a lot of story discussion in those books. It's kind of like in Cerebus. Yeah, you can get the Cerebus in the phone books, but if you can actually score the individual issues, you can read along with the letter pages and things like that. So Tales of the Bean World, if I get rid of every single comic I ever own, I will never get rid of my Bean World collection. Dan?
Well, mine is actually, I keep saying that, actually. I don't, like, no one else is going to No one else is going to like what I like.
Oh.
What was that?
Just grunting.
Oh, okay. Is the Sandman's Vertigo Sandman series?
You actually like that? Ew.
Oh my god!
Shut up.
Yes, I actually like that. And someone was very nice, and every year for I think it was 6 years, got me the leather-bound editions of the sets when they were coming out. Thank you, Cory.
You're welcome.
Um,
I'm just an old softy. I'm a goody two-shoes.
Yes, you are. It was so well written, and just it was nothing like I had read before, comics and really anything. A lot of the concepts in it just made me think. I hated him for that, but made me think. And just the way I kind of looked at the world shifted because of just some of the core concepts of the comic.
You don't mind if you meet death.
No, not at all. The funny thing is, like I said, this had a very profound effect on me when I think I was just at the end of junior high and getting into high school when I first discovered it. And so Neil Gaiman has always been one of those that I'd always worried about, that if I met him, it would be one of the few people that I might fangirl over, kind of thing, as they put it. Luckily, I found out that I can control myself, because I was working for somebody at one point as their personal assistant, and they had to go get their hair done, so I drove them out to their salon. And we're sitting there, and she comes out and she says, "Hey, by the way, our afternoon has changed." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And she goes, We're having tea with Neil." I'm like, "Oh, okay," whoever that is. And then Neil Gaiman comes walking out from the back.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, "Oh my god." So very quietly, I sat and had something to drink while my boss at the time and Neil Gaiman had a conversation. But so that was my moment of seeing somebody who had profoundly affected my life and not being able to say a damn thing about it.
And you remember in issue 75 where Darkseid was sitting next to Batman? Yeah, that was cool.
That was really cool. So, but yeah, I absolutely loved the series. It's one of the few that the final issues, number 75, I actually bought like 12 copies of.
And the comic shop at the time thanked you.
Yes, it was Schindler's, and I think I did clean them out. Adam,
what was your first Sandman? Did you jump in from the beginning, or was it when Cory gave it to you?
No. It was in between, well in between.
Yeah,
I
think a lot of people it was.
Yeah, I actually jumped into it fairly late because, like I said, it started in '89, but I didn't discover it until like 93, 94. So it was the Kindly Ones. It was like the second to last story that I jumped in on it. I happened to catch the first issue of the Kindly Ones, which was drawn by Chris. Oh God, what's his last name?
Bacalo?
Yes, Chris Bacalo. One of the few artists I actually know their name off the top of my head usually. And that was the Death that I, of course, ended up loving. And I've got this poster that he did that I just absolutely love, and I've reproduced it on my own. It was one of the first things that I did that wasn't like my own art and actually looked like something a comic would have, like a not a cartoon or the Sunday comics, which is the art that I usually produce. It actually looked like something somebody would want to buy, because no one buys my other shit.
Who did you say the artist was?
Chris Bacalo.
Bacalo.
Are you talking the covers?
He did some of the covers. He did some of the art, some of the interior art.
Yeah, Mark Hempel did a lot of the Kindly Ones internally.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Chris did it before. Sorry, he did the story beforehand. and then was doing some of the covers of the kindly ones.
Okay. See, the reason I know that because when Mark took over, it was so jarring to me that I didn't read the kindly ones until it was finished. And then I read it and I was like, oh, okay, this is cool.
Yeah. But that's when I got into it. So, and then I went back and read everything, got trade paperbacks and stuff like that. And then it was well after that I actually met Cory. But I did not hide the fact that I absolutely loved that comic series. And then when they started coming out, he bought me the series as it came out in the leather-bound editions. So, and came with a couple of them came with statues that I also have. In fact, I just turned around where I'm sitting. There's one right, the first one that I got with that set, that first book. So, anyway, Adam, how about you? What's your number one?
My number one is X-Men. It goes back to 1989 again, and ties into the Sears and Penny's comic book sets, and it's just kind of like what finally crystallized me completely to knowing that I was going to be reading comic books for the rest of my life. Even if I wasn't going to read X-Men for the rest of my life, comic books. But so Christmas of '88, I got one of those 25, 30 comic sets from Sears or Penny's, and was just reading through stuff just one day to read things. And in that set, I just happened to luck out and get 3 of the 4 issues of the first Genosha story arc.
Oh!
And read that, and it was like, ooh, I really like this stuff. This is awesome. This X-Men stuff, I don't know what it is, but it's speaking to me. And then I managed to buy issue 229 from a kid at school, so this was like 6th grade, and was like, ooh, look at this. This is super violent, because it's like the first appearance of the Reavers, and they like shoot up this bank, and there's like blood and shit and everything, and I was just like, again, I'm 12 years old, so this is pretty rad stuff. And then I really liked Rogue, and I was just like, I'm gonna start reading this X-Men stuff. I really like this Rogue girl, and the first issue I buy is 247, where she gets sucked through the Siege Perilous. And I'm like, oh, they've killed the character that I liked. And then the next issue, I'm like, who the fuck is this Jim Lee guy on art? And where's
Who's he
Marshall
think he is?
Destry?
What happened to Binary?
Yeah, where's Binary? But X-Men was just, it was like the, I don't know, man. It just, I was into comics. I'd been collecting comics for about 4 years at that point. But X-Men was where I knew I was just going to be into comics. And by the end of 1989, I was like, oh, there's X-Factor, New Mutants, and Excalibur? Well, I better start buying those too, because they have crossovers, and I need to know what's going on. And it was just kind of all downhill after that.
Just the way I was with hookers.
Yes, and blow.
Yes.
But so yeah, so I went from like buying, 1 book a month from, Transformers, and then G.I. Joe, and the occasional stuff I would just get just for fun or in a Christmas set, to suddenly buying 4 books a month, and then moving into Spider-Man and buying Spider-Man, and then
It's a trap.
It's a trap. And then Ninja Turtles, and then made it through all the way to 1991 when the second X-Men title started, and then the second Spider-Man title. Well, that would have been the 4th Spider-Man title at that point. But I thought Spectacular and Web were stupid, and I didn't understand why they were needed. So again, I'm a kid, and then, Image happened, and it just was like, then I'm buying, like, all the Image books, and then Valiant, I'm buying all the Valiant books, and before you know it, I'm 15, 16 years old, I have disposable income, I'm dropping $80 a week on comics, so... So thanks, X-Men. And I still, I speak in Claremontisms to this day. And I have nicknames for people, and it's because, Wolverine had nicknames for people, or whoever had nicknames for people. It's just something that, just became one of, the fundamental building blocks of who I am to this day, was Claremont's run on X-Men. So that's my number one. Cory, wrap this up.
My number one, it shocks me that no one has brought it up.
Must suck.
After Crisis on Infinite Earths, DC restarted a whole bunch of books. And one of the books that had fallen out of favor and had pretty much was canceled due to the fact that no one was buying it anymore was the Justice League of America. And it came back. It spun out of John Byrne and John Ostrander's Legends miniseries. And it was J.M. DeMatteis, Keith Giffen, and Kevin Maguire doing the Justice League.
Wait a minute. Are you bad-mouthing Justice League Detroit?
Yes.
Good, because if you don't, I will.
All day, anytime I bring it up, J.M. DeMatteis will go, hey, be nice. Everybody forgets J.M. DeMatteis actually wrote the last few issues of Justice League where he killed off the new characters. But Justice League, by those three, was a breath of fresh air. At the same time, we were getting Watchmen and Dark Knight and Miracle Man, and everything was getting darker and grimmer and heavier. You had this sitcom-like version of the Justice League. And to this day, I can quote, I can actually say one line, and I bet Joe will be able to completely visualize the entire scene. Ready, Joe?
I am.
One punch! One punch! And the reason it worked is because it wasn't all just humor and comedy. The characters were treated as if they were real people. There were dramatic sequences. There was a supervillain subplot. There were actually very harrowing sequences. It did everything. And while it probably went on a little longer than it should have, it was the first time that I could remember that the Justice League became really popular. They had a second Justice League book. They had tie-in books. They had a quarterly. All of these things because people loved this run so much. When I got on to Genie, which was kind of like America Online, except it was smaller, and it was kind of this national bulletin board system in the late 80s, early 90s. That was the book that everyone was talking about. When a new issue of Justice League came out, they talk about the X-Men, but Justice League was the book that us online fans loved because it captured something that was needed in comics. It was fun. And they just put out the first omnibus of it. And going back and looking at it, first off, Kevin Maguire's art is amazing. And the fact that he's not one of the biggest superstars in comics baffles me. But it's fun. It's entertaining. And you can go back and you can read it, and it's still fresh and exciting and fun. And if you have not read the Justice League from the late 80s, you need to do yourself a favor. You need to pick it up either in trade paperbacks or in hardcovers or however you can get it, because you're going to really enjoy those books. And that's the 80s, ladies and gentlemen.
Big hair.
Spice Girls.
That was the 90s.
Yeah, but they're making a comeback.
Toys and cartoon tie-in.
Oh, yeah.
Damn right.
Thank you, Reagan.
I actually...
Getting rid of the rule that didn't allow toy commercials during the show.
Nope, what it was, that was why Marvel worked. They didn't have commercials for G.I. Joe toys. They had commercials for the comic, and in the comic, they had ads for the toys. That's how they got around it. Well, believe it or not, kids,
I don't believe it.
you have listened to us blather on about funny books for almost 2 hours again.
I love it when we use our mouths.
Poor Wolfie, he really hasn't had much to say the last 2 episodes. So let's keep it that way. Dan?
Yes?
Where will you be appearing over the next couple of months?
Over the next couple of months. What month is it? It's February. In April I will be at Anime Detour. In May I will be at Demicon in Des Moines, Iowa. Hey, stop on by, Adam. Let's see here. Where else? I think SpringCon
Let me whip this out.
Huh?
Let me whip this out.
Yeah, let me whip this out. Yeah. So those are the more recent ones, or the ones that are coming up, I believe. So I don't think I've forgotten anything.
Adam, who do you have coming up on Panels and Pizza?
Panels and nothing.
So this drops. Okay, the week this episode drops, you'll be able to listen to my interview with Jason Aaron.
Ooh. Who's that?
He's the guy doing Thor right now and kicking mighty ass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, writing Mighty Thor, just finished up a 3-year run on Star Wars, has written tons and tons and tons of stuff for Marvel. You know, Wolverine, Hulk, Wolverine and the X-Men, Punisher, just a ton of stuff for them. And,
Are you sure he's any good? He doesn't seem to be able to keep a job.
He's all right. So he's coming up. Kaylin Smith, Ashley A. Woods, and a couple of guys from the Insane Comics publishing company. And then I kind of got confirmation that I will be at MSP Comic-Con.
Oh, cool.
And I've got some stuff coming up with writer Elliot Rahal that is happening in March that hasn't been announced yet. I'll be doing ChapelCon in July, so way out there. Should be back for Minnesota Fan Fest in August. Something I haven't really talked about a lot yet because things could change, but I will be back in the Twin Cities from March until about the beginning of June to wrap up some of my old life. So that's what's coming up for me. So, and just more podcast where I know who everybody is through episode 172, and then after that, it's a mystery.
Where can we find such podcastly goodness?
FancyPantsGangsters.com. You can download and subscribe there. Panels and Pizza is also on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, Google Play, SoundCloud, and iHeartRadio.
Neat.
Wow, you're part of the Clear Channel network now.
I suppose that's something that the network did and just kind of were like, hey, you're here now. And I'm like, okay.
Just think, you work for the same company as Rush Limbaugh.
Oh.
Well, kids, as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. Unless it's Transformers, and then I just sleep. Joe?
You're ready to go to the home.
Sorry. Hit my music.